Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. Happy Monday, or whatever day you're listening to this. I'm excited that you're here. This is going to be another installment of When Ghosts Speak. So for those of you who might be new to the show or have missed the other ones, this is when I have been experimenting in channeling, of opening and connecting and I don't know. Maybe it's just my mind expanded. Maybe it's me giving myself the freedom to just sort of speak freely. But the feedback that I get from you guys is you seem to like these episodes. So I'm more than happy to share with you some of the things that have come through. Honestly, I don't really remember, I don't remember much when it's happening. And then I don't remember which ones I've shared with you guys. And I'm too lazy to just go back and listen to the thing. So some of this might be a repeat because I've combined a couple of sections, one from a while ago, and then adding to it something that just happened recently. So since it seems fresh to me, I figure if you've heard it before, it's good to hear again. So thank you guys as always for being here. Next week, I'm going to talk about some of the emails that I got from the Buddhist, the Art of Communication episode. Some nice things came through there. So I'll share that with you guys next week. So as always, you can hit up the show at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram at James E. Rohr. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into When Ghosts Speak. So earlier this week, I posted something on Instagram that was this meme that says, have we checked all food to see if exploding them makes them into something better, or do we just stop with corn? I love that in part because I just love popcorn. But also it reminded me of this guy that I went to acupuncture school with. So in acupuncture school, I also studied the Chinese herbs. And so when you're in the herb classes, they give you samples of the herbs because oftentimes like the way that they look can help you to understand their functions. It makes it easier to memorize. Obviously, you've got to be adept at identifying the herbs to make sure you're getting the right one, not just trusting like the label. And so you get these herb samples. And I had this friend of mine who said that he was like, yo, Jimmy, he's like, I've started smoking all of our samples. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, what if there's something that can like get us really high that we don't even know about yet? And, these Chinese samples, like this could be awesome. And I was like, dude, you're nuts. And then I was like, don't you think that with like the thousands of years of cultural continuity that we have from ancient China to modern day, that if this stuff was going to get you high, like we would probably know about it? And his eyes got real big and he was like, yeah, but what if we don't? So a few days goes by and we're sitting in class and the guy just starts coughing and coughing in the back of the room. And at the break, I was like, dude, what's up with you and this cough? And he was like, man, I made it through like 6 herbs and that last one just totally fucked me up. The guy ended up having a cough for like 4 months. It was crazy. So after, I think we ended up studying something like 200, maybe even more than that, individual herbs. But this guy only made it through smoking 5 of them. So anyway... All right, let's go ahead and get in now. I don't have a graceful transition into When Ghosts Speak. I just thought that story was really funny. So the When Ghosts Speak. So they're going to reference an experience that happened to me years ago after an acupuncture treatment where I saw this woman outside of Chicago that I've been seeing for a bit. And this one particular session, afterwards, I was just like bawling. Like I got in my car and started driving home and I couldn't even make it home. I just was like overcome with emotion. And I spent like, I must have cried for like an hour and a half. And I kept searching for a story to attach it to, and I couldn't find one. It was just this like profound feeling of sadness, maybe even of grief. But I couldn't like pinpoint it to a story or to any like particular instance. It was just this massive kind of volume of feeling. And so they're going to make a reference to that. Maybe I'll stop when we get into it. Let's just see how it goes. So, all right. It's a great day, isn't it? Say that to yourself again. Notice how it feels in your body. You see sadness and despair. It's a deficiency of positivity. It is the great forgetting. Your work must help people to remember. And yet they can't race to fill in the despair or to walk away from it. The beauty of forgetting is the remembering. That pain and emptiness will dissolve. Do you remember after that day, after your acupuncture session, when you drove to the park and cried for a couple hours? That was part of the remembering, the reconnection. You searched for a story, and there wasn't one to be found because it was just us that was surrounding you. Once when you felt lost and lonely, and then there was more. There is the grief of all the times you thought you were alone, and then you realize that you never were alone. But the pain of that self-deceit is immense, and it's all okay. There's nothing to be done about it other than continuing to speak of and creating opportunities for yourself and others to remember. A book you could write on love could also be called the Book of Remembering. And remembering, as it is in your language, is the remembering, the putting yourself back together again, putting you back together. This is what it's like in your energy field. You are a great container. And when you feel weak and tired and small and afraid, there are holes in your energy field. You are a container missing a bottom or a side wall or pieces from all over. A container with holes can't hold very much for very long. Health is the repairing of these holes, creating a whole, stronger container. The up-leveling you coaches speak of is this, fortifying your container so you can hold more. Those who haven't healed, those who are perpetually in a state of lack, of poverty, it's because they cannot reconcile the energy of our constant love with the day-to-day vibrations of their current quote-unquote reality. We spoke about reality before. Reality changes. Don't ever assume what you see is what exactly is. It is much as one drop of paint can lead you to see all the colors in a kaleidoscope. If white light has all the wavelengths of color, when you look at white, do you also see the red, blue, purple, and so on? If so, then you know that inside any flash of white light is the entirety of all other colors. But if you take the surface vision to be just a white light, then you miss it. Practically, you may not consider this every time you see a white light. But spend time in contemplation in the specific act of remembering, and you won't feel so alone. You'll realize that the answers you were looking for were for unimportant questions. I love that. The questions were coming from a place of insecurity and fear. And when you begin to experience the shapes and tumbling of reality, you will see there's nothing to be afraid of. There are just journeys to embark upon and love to be shared. Now let's talk about your organs. You cannot treat all organs the same. When you're doing your meditation or self-healing, you cannot just think of them as organs. They have strikingly different qualities, different temperaments, different reactions. Take time to explore the space inside the organs. Allow yourself to connect with each and let it tell you how it behaves. The Chinese, with their yin-yang classifications, are good. They recognize the different shens in each of them. This is good. So I'll interrupt here. What they're talking about there is that in Chinese medicine, they noticed how there's like shens, which is like the spirit or the temperament, and each of the different organs has different qualities to it. And so, there's different emotions that the Chinese medicine says are stored in the different energies or in the different organs. But there's also this idea of like a spirit of the organ. And that kind of contributes to your overall spirit or soul. So it's as if like you were to think of your soul as being not fractured, but split into different kind of qualities. Or if your soul, let's just stick with colors since they were talking about it. Like if you think about your soul as white light, and then as it gets into the liver, it would be, green, and the lungs, it would be white, and the spleen, it might be yellow, and the kidneys, it might be black. And that as it takes those different colors, it embodies and has different responsibilities. And one of the things that I find most fascinating is that of all of the temperaments or the shens of the organs, all of them from the majority of the organs are said to kind of go on into the afterlife, but it's the shen and the temperament of the lung that is tied to this incarnation. And so when there's issues with the lungs, it has a lot to do with things that are happening like in this lifetime, in this experience, right? And so when we talk about how the lungs store grief, this is going to be something that, is very much, that grief is tied so much to this reality, this 3D experience here in this time and space. And so that's where the lungs will really feel that. Meanwhile, the energies of like the liver and the kidneys and the spleen, they can kind of remerge with your overall soul or shen and continue on into whatever that next journey is. So maybe I can have an episode where we just talk all about this stuff, but that's what they're referencing there. Okay, all right, here we go. But you mustn't just think of it as your body. Get to know the anima of each organ. Allow yourself the possibility of talking to each organ. Love the tissues. Appreciate the cells. There's an entire planet inside of you with a host of different responsibilities. Think of them as different instruments in an orchestra. They work and play in harmony, but each one is quite different. When someone is ill or is trying to transform, they can't be satisfied to just pray for the body. They must dive into the nuance of the responsibilities. Only in the conversation with the organs will they release what has been there. And don't limit the understanding to your Western medicine. They've only understood a fraction. There is so much more communication and tendrils creating the ecosystem of the body that if you're able to sense frequency, vibration, and invisible threads connecting seemingly disparate parts of the body, this is all good. Ultimately, the healing has less to do with the actual physical structure. It is in the space and spirit of the organ that real healing can happen. But this requires some sensitivity, willingness, and imagination. When you allow that sensitivity to go deeper, you can see the spark of light, the spark of the organ. Have you accepted yet that so much of this life force is based on the activation and sparks of reactions between nerves, cells, organs, brain, and heart? It is the electricity that is important. To kill unwanted growth or unhealthy cells, you must turn off the electricity feeding it. This is different from nutrition. Use your mind and intention to deprive the cells of the means of activation. Surround it with light if you want, but prevent the sparks from igniting. It's like a lighter in a dry forest. Don't let it continue to spark. But watch what sparks in the body. Your culture uses the word triggered now. Watch the spark. Watch what is ignited. Watch the chain reactions that happen. And simply dive into the body and diffuse the spark when a chain reaction has been initiated that doesn't feel good. One day you will realize that the space around you and inside of you is much more valuable than your substance. There is so much charged in that empty space that you cannot access. You are swimming in a sea of riches and yet claiming poverty. All that you have ever needed is in that space. Whoa. That's a lot of things there. That's a lot. So it seems to me, they're talking here about healing and, how we can perhaps guide and move our energy to facilitate our own healing. And it seems like so much of these messages where there's that duality, right? They're talking about the substance, they're talking about sparks and activations and communicating with the organs and that physical, the energy that's in these organ systems. And yet at the same time, they finish with talking about space and emptiness, that which might be more challenging to access or is invisible to us at this time. So I don't really know what to do with that except just to keep paying attention. And that if you're somebody out there who is challenged right now with your health and your wellness, it seems that, you might find thinking about your energy field as having holes. You might ask yourself, where am I draining in my energy field? Where are there holes in my energy field? One of my teachers used to say that illness was like a rip in the fabric of your energy field, similar, to the holes. But I think the word that he would use is a tear or a rip. And you have to sew that up. You have to mend the quilt, the blanket that is your energy field. So you might ask yourself, where am I leaking energy? Where do I feel like perhaps energetically I've been, shot myself or whatever, and the energy is draining. And using your hands, using your attention, using your essential oils to heal that, to pray over that hole, to ask for your spirit guides or your soul or whatever to help you to transform that place where you're losing energy. And then at the same time, it's also about diving not just into like your auric or your larger energy field, but communicating with your organs and asking the organs, what might you need? What is happening here? What are the stories that you can tell me? What is it like being my small intestine? What's it like being my liver? What's it like being my heart? And I love the part where they were talking about light, and the wavelengths that are in the light. It reminds me of when I was when I did the ayahuasca. And I don't know if I ever told this story on here, but when I was doing the ayahuasca, prior to that, I had been feeling, this is going to sound crazy, even crazier than this other shit. But I had been doing, in my acupuncture practice, I've been feeling like aliens coming. It was so weird. They were like these figures. Aliens is probably not the right word, but they were like these figures that would show up in treatments. And the feeling was they were curious. They were sort of observing, and I don't know. It was the thing that happened. I felt this energy, and it happened like multiple times. They would never communicate with me. I mean, maybe sort of like a visual acknowledgement, but they wouldn't communicate. They wouldn't talk. I'd ask questions. They'd ignore me, and they would just kind of observe. They wouldn't even meddle with things. They were just like really observing. And then I happened to be invited to do this ayahuasca ceremony at the same time. And so I had maybe like a week notice. And I kept thinking in that week leading up to going into the journey that, it'd be great if I could get some answers as to what was happening with this, these like beings or things I was sensing. And so when I was in the ayahuasca journey, at one point, I was talking to the ayahuasca vine, and I was like, Mother Aya, like, I've been feeling these things coming in treatments, and I want to know like what it is. I want to know what's happening. And she was like, you can't handle it. I was like, what do you mean I can't handle it? I was like, come on, I'm here. Like, you're here. You're asking me what I want, where I want to go. What do I want to know? I was like, I want to know about that. Take me there. I want to see like where they come from, and like I want to learn. And she was like, you can't handle it. Like, what else would you like? It's like it's like those jokes with the genie where they're like, this guy finds a genie bottle and the genie pops out and he's like, hey, I'm old, I'm tired. You get one wish. And the guy says, well, I'm afraid to fly. So I'd love if you could build a highway to Hawaii because I've always wanted to go to the islands and I've just been too afraid to fly. And the genie's like, I already told you I'm tired, guy. Do you have any idea like what's involved in the kind of like raw material and engineering and construction to build a highway from California to Hawaii? And genie's just not having it. He's like, pick something else. And the guy says, okay, I want to understand everything there is to know about women. And the genie looks at the guy and says, you want that highway 2 lanes or 4? So anyway, it's like, it reminds me of, like that, where it's like, she's like, where do you want to know? And I was like, I want to learn about these aliens. And she's like, you can't handle it. Like, pick something else. And so, I was asking about like Wyatt and Jen, and it was early in the relationship and whatever. And so like, I had these other experiences that were cool. And then we came back and I was like, yo, I really want to see these aliens. She's like, you cannot handle it. And I was like, I don't care if I can't handle it. I want it. Right. Desire was like that episode last time, like desire is the root of suffering. And so finally she relents. She's like, all right, fine. And it was like immediately I felt like I was being lifted up by the crown of my head and yanked through the cosmos. And it was as though I was like flying through the Milky Way and just like beyond and beyond and beyond. And it was like, I've never had an experience like it. It was so crazy. And then all of a sudden I see in the distance what would seem to be a planet, but it was just so kind of like vague. But as we got closer, and it's happening so fast, all I could see was like light, but there was like outlines of, what I would think of as like a building, but it's not really, but it was just like, it was light everywhere. And I could feel entities there, and they were all just like this bright white, like glowing light. And then at one point, it was as though there was like a light beam that was shot in my direction, like information, and it felt so encoded with so much information that I couldn't handle it. I was like just immediately overcome and just completely overwhelmed with whatever the information was that was encoded in this like photon. That then, like in actual life, I immediately sat up and started purging again in the bucket. And I was just like, all of this stuff came up, and it was just like being totally overwhelmed, and my body had no idea what to do with it. And as I was there, like hovering over this bucket, the I was just like, I told you so. Which seems to be a theme in some of my experiences, is that, they're all telling me stuff. And maybe it's the coyote nature in me that's just like, I don't care. We're just doing it anyway. And so anyway, like when the ghosts speak, we're talking about the light, and being able to, that there's like, inside of the inside, or that there's other things that might be embedded in there. I do think that I don't know where this comes from, but my sense is that we will either be able to, transmit a lot more information through light, or that we're going to be able to unpack a light wave even more to see that there's, more information that's there. There's more power than we might realize. And so, I think that was interesting. I love hearing from you guys. Please let me know what you think of this. If you've had any experiences with your own healing, like have you felt holes in your energy field? Have you had communication with your organs? Have you, even maybe body talk has helped you with that? Or some of you might do like muscle testing. I'd love to hear what your experiences are and have been around this, and and what you think might be some of the messages in this last session of When Ghosts Speak. So yeah, man, I don't know. We're all out here just trying to pay attention, right? I just try to stay alert. Every time that I have these that feeling, that energy to write and to transcribe the messages, I just keep thinking about the same message that my teachers have had for me, like for as long as I've been able to like remember having guides and mentors, which is to stay alert, keep paying attention. And that's it. Like, keep paying attention, stay alert. And it seems that, here with this last one where they start talking more about space, it's like I had this great experience with Joe Dispenza's meditation where he talks about, identifying the organ and the space around it. It seems to help us shift gears. I was talking with Philip Attar the other day, and he was talking about the space and the space as well, and that seems to be something that keeps popping up for me to pay attention to and to think about and to experience. And so you might also start embracing that as well, of like, paying attention to the physical, but also what might seem to be the invisible, what power, what energy might be there that we can manipulate or to move or to influence or to help us to heal or to grow, basically creating that energetic environment around us to thrive. So thank you guys, as always, for being here. Have a great week, and I'll catch you next time.